Warhammer is a hobby that has been around for well over 30 years now, getting its start in the 80s with the first edition Warhammer Fantasy, and later in 1987 with Rogue Trader, or what would become Warhammer 40,000. Through that time, the hobby has had an amazing amount of changes, as materials have become better, molds have become more dynamic, and painting systems have grown up, I'll say. In the early days of the 5th editions of both Fantasy and 40k, painting models had a high barrier of entry, without a solid base, shade, and layer system that we have today. Furthermore, brushes were limited to brushes meant for large canvases, and not the specialized miniature painting brushes that we have today. In a modern-day Games Workshop, that barrier of entry still exists, but it's a much smaller wall. Some of you might have joined the hobby from any of the many computer games that cover both Fantasy and Warhammer 40,000. Maybe you walked into a local game store and saw some people playing. Perhaps you wandered into a place called Games Workshop and wondering what it was all about. So if you're new to the hobby, I want to help you break down that hurdle, or at least the stigma of anxiety and fear that exists with painting some of your first miniatures. In this video today, I want to shed some light on YouTube channels that I visit almost daily to get a better sense of maybe how a codex works, some fun narrative tabletop battles, how to tackle specific painting projects or color schemes, specific modeling techniques, and a number of other tips that these channels help out with. And before we get started, let's talk about some disclaimers. I did approach these guys before making this video, so I did get their approval. You will find a link to each one of their YouTube channels in the comments, description, and a link in their relevant section to the video I point out as maybe my favorite or my go-to video. Maybe it's just the first one I discovered, whatever one it is, but it's one that I maybe got as a gateway into this channel and on a big way. Also, none of these channels are in any order except for maybe the last one, but I don't think any one is better than the other. They all have their strengths, and that's why there's a variety on this list. One last note as well, it's worth bringing up what a wealth of information and knowledge Warhammer TV has become. It was not like this in the past, and it is so easy to now get access to Duncan, the Lord of Layers, going through how to paint minis and how different approaches you can take on certain specific things. But they have moved to a more smaller form of painting guide video lately, but I still use their Blood Angel paint guide for painting my minis today. But let's dive in on this big bad list. Our first channel is Winter's SEO, and I chose this channel first because he was one of the first channels that I ever discovered. And I was basing my Blood Angels back in the early 7th edition, and he has this very easy and simple guide for basing. It's an older video, it's back in 2014, but I've been a sub of his for a number of years, and he has since moved a bit away from extensive painting or hobby guides, and instead, you can find a lot of, or at least some of the best battle reports on YouTube. Now, there isn't any fancy camera work, but let me click one of these real quick. You can take a look here. But Winters always brings a lot of really diverse armies to the table. Moreover, they're approachable armies. These are his personal armies or armies of some of his subscribers and or friends in the area. And he plays the narrative Maelstrom format, so you won't be getting any hot tips on ITC, but that's quite alright, especially if you've just started out. What I love about his battle reports is that they are easy to follow, relatively short form. I mean, this one is an hour and 48 minutes, and there's some flavor attached to this. And you can see the house rules or the friendliness of the game kicking in from time to time when there is little disputes or moments of forgetting rules. So if you're brand new to the hobby, I think Winter's SEO is a great place to start because it gives you that sort of at-home or local game store feel to your games. And that's what you'll be playing for the first few games anyway. And this guy is really going to help you get acquainted with the rules, how Maelstrom works, the ins and outs of other armies you might never get a chance to play in your local meta. Just a lot of great tips for building out your first army, or at least coming back to the hobby and understanding how drastically the rules have changed for some factions over others. I honestly can't recommend him enough. There are, of course, other amazing battle report channels on YouTube with awesome production value, but Winters holds a special place in my heart as one of the first Warhammer YouTube channels that I've ever discovered, and I really enjoy that at-home feel I was talking about earlier, at least. Next up is Xenus Minis. This is a bit smaller of a channel compared to the rest of the ones on this list, but it is still quite a mighty one. Greg, the gentleman who runs this, has a really interesting formula that, in my opinion, really works for him. He has a lot of diverse content, covering basing, advanced painting tutorials, unboxings, scenery, hobby supplies, pretty much the whole gamut. And what I enjoy about Xenus Minis is that he also has an accompanying Instagram that is very well built out. I spend a lot of time on Instagram following, model painters or Instagrams dedicated to specific armies. And truth be told, that's how I first discovered this channel. Greg puts up a lot of bite-sized one-page format painting guides on his Instagram that get you interested for the full video somewhere on his YouTube page. I mean, for instance, I discovered this video, how to paint black armor using 3 colors, from him posting a quick little one-page video, one-page little post on his Instagram about painting black armor. And he's very forthcoming and giving advice and saying, oh, hey, if you want to learn more about this, jump to this portion of my YouTube, or hey, let me have a conversation with you. He's very, very communicative in both his YouTube and his Instagram. And I think that's what is a really strong strength for him, is that he is very much a face of a community. And that really can be said for all these guys. They all are very invested in their communities and people that do follow them. But each one of these videos itself are never longer than like 10 minutes or so, as you kind of like scrub through these 13, 1050, 628, 253. So it's a really short form, fast approach to digesting what would normally be a much longer format lesson. But there's a bit of an on-the-go vibe that I really enjoy, fitting into my otherwise very hectic schedule. He does run a Patreon that allows you to get a bit more of a masterclass approach to specific painting lessons. And I get that's another thing that's worth approaching here too, is that pretty much all of these guys do have a Patreon that do allow you to get an on the hands of either the channel, masterclassing on specific painting guides, so on and so forth. So if you are interested in jumping into their Patreons, I'm sure you can find them all on their respective channel that you'll be linked to. But he does have a great video on how to attack sub-assemblies. Now, this is something I'm trying for the first time in like 20 plus years of being in the hobby. But it's a part of a series of building and painting, which I can't encourage enough for anyone looking to attack their first batch of miniatures in Warhammer, or really any set of miniatures. Back in May, a new YouTube channel popped up on my recommended videos, and it was the mighty Squidmar Miniatures. With less than a year on YouTube, Emil's channel has blown up to over 60,000 subscribers, and with good reason. Squidmar covers a lot of ground, and it's not just focused on Games Workshop, it's across the entirety of miniature model painting, hobbying as a whole. Now, I'm a bit of a Citadel painting system purist, mainly because it's just all I know, but that's something that Squidmar has slowly been chipping away for me. He does an amazing job of combining both the palette of Citadel with other well-known paint brands out there, like, the mighty Vallejo painting system. Just like Xenus Minis, Squidmar also covers more than just simply paints, but also basing, how to utilize contrast paints to get battle-ready miniatures, but also how to leverage non-contrast paints to bring that to the next level, and other videos. Now, when I say other videos, I really mean other videos. Emil has this amazing ability to go off the beaten path of the normal hobby-centric YouTube channel, and delivers some really diverse and amazing content. And I think that is so important for anyone breaking into the hobby. It's really easy and almost expected of you to follow a pretty linear path in the beginning. But as you get more comfortable with your materials, the tools at your disposal, and your own skills, you can branch into a lot of very eclectic approaches to modeling. Like, you take a look at some of these videos, he does like IKEA Chapter Space Marine, where he uses a $6 paint set from IKEA to make a Space Marine. He does a lot of really cool different things, and he does things that you would kind of take part in as someone who's in the hobby who maybe isn't painting all the time, like this one where he pretty much reviews money spent on different Fiverr artists, or he challenges 3 painters to a duel. Like, he does all this really different stuff, and I really, really enjoy it. Squidmar has this amazing tutorial video on how to do water bases for Ideneth Deepkin. It's run by his friend, who is also named Emil. And Squidmar covers airbrushes, he covers LED lights and models, OSL techniques, and more. What I really like about this is that Emil himself mentions how much of a challenge it is to hit some of these subjects, and how he strives to grow each and every day in the hobby. And I think it's a really important message to hear getting into the hobby. It's an overall positive and, well, strong message to hear as a newbie or even an older veteran to help break that mold that we fall into when it comes to just using the same system over and over and over. During his Q&A video, he talks about challenging himself to try one new technique with every model that he paints. And that was a sentiment that absolutely blew my mind because I, too often, look at painting as a mission rather than an exploratory exercise. And on top of soothing music, great personality, and awesome graphic design, Squidmar is a channel you should absolutely check out. The largest channel on this list at the time of writing, Scott the Miniature Maniac, and his YouTube channel Miniac is one of my absolute favorite channels on YouTube, and not even from strictly a hobby perspective. Scott, like the previous two channels, covers a lot of ground, and you really get a feel for the journey that Miniac has had up to this point. Comprehensive guides on how to build a wet palette. That's something that plenty of channels do, Squidmar's included, but none of them showcase a beautiful slurping sound that Scott does.
Moist.
Painting terminology, techniques, painting prep, non-metallic metal, and a number of other subjects really give you a strong sense of direction when you start to really crack into the more advanced avenues of the hobby. And that isn't to say that there's nothing to glean for someone new. Nay, quite the contrary. If you haven't stopped this video to go listen to that slurping noise for wet palettes, fire up Scott's videos on the best brushes. Don't worry, I've provided a link for you, you saucy bastards. And now, I have been using Citadel brushes for years. And I have the red ones with like the civil metal ferrules, all the way up to the most recent ones. I've never touched anything else because I thought it was, a user error, not a brush error on my part. Truth be told, it's like a bit of both. But on his recommendation, I bought some Raphael brushes, and it blew my socks right off my feet and through my computer screen. The amount of paint that they hold, their ability to maintain a point, everything. Don't worry, if you don't know those terms, Scott discusses them in the video to help you understand brushes a bit more and really educates you on when you're going to buy your next one. And that's something I really love about Miniac. You get this almost professor level art class with each and every video. Scott is hilarious, like fucking hilarious. Like this video on paint testing, by tasting it.
Of PB29. It jumps off the tongue and races to show you its pride.
It's beautiful. It's eloquent. It's amazing. And he uses that to help drive his art knowledge home, making it relatable and fun to learn. You don't feel like you're in over your head when he mentions color theory or anything of the sort. You're right along for the ride. When I'm painting my Blood Angels, I constantly pull up his heavy metal series, which is around here somewhere. But he does a nice, beautiful heavy metal series where he covers the heavy metal style of painting. And he covers a lot of different models, but that Blood Angels one is like butter. Further, Miniac also covers on some of the pitfalls of not just Warhammer models, and that's probably something I should have said. Like Squidmar, Scott is focused on model painting as a whole, showcasing models from a wide range of companies. But he goes into detail about dealing with painter's fatigue, failing during painting competitions, viewer feedback on their models. There's this one, failing short of expectations, viewer feedback on their models. And there's a real community around Miniac, and it shows. You can tell that people are very invested in his well-being as well as the channel, and I really like that. It can be very easy to get mired in the negativity of certain aspects of not just Games Workshop hobbying, but miniatures as a whole. And that's something that I love about Miniac, is that overwhelming positivity you get from both his videos and his channel. Before we move on to the next video though, I'd like Scott's trademark ending to his videos to be a daily reminder to...
Don't forget to...
Last but certainly not least is Darren Latham's personal YouTube channel. Also a newcomer to YouTube, Latham is by no means a new personality to the Games Workshop hobby. A prominent member of Games Workshop, Latham got his start painting hundreds of Space Marines, as he illustrates in his videos. A member of the heavy metal team and now a designer for Games Workshop, Latham's approach is different from the rest of the channels we have talked about so far. With each video you fire up, you get a very, very masterclass level approach of a particular subject. Honestly, he's last on this list because I think I have watched all of his videos multiple times over. And every time I take in something new that I missed before. You go along with him as he shows you very advanced painting techniques. These techniques might not be applicable to an entire army, something that he makes the claim for when he's showing you his process, but I love how he really gives you or gets you to play outside of the standard base, shade, layer system that you have right now with Games Workshop. He does this by having you paint like a lot of these painters that we've already talked about would if they were painting for a competition. I mean, you'll be combining your base layer with your next paint in a 50-50 to get a more gradual transition before moving up to that next paint, and then 50-50 of the one before or after that. Just, it's a way more of like an actual like artist style approach to painting. Well, not that the other ones aren't artists, but he goes into how glazing can pull together the lighting and shading that you've just created across your model. A lot of just really more advanced techniques that you don't really think of when you're first jumping into the hobby. What's really awesome about all of these more advanced techniques, take the painting black armor for example, at the end he shows you a quick recipe for doing just an entire army versus the character level detail that his guides typically go into. You take a look here, I mean, look at this, I mean, look how beautiful that is. That's your black armor guide here, but as you jump to the end, right around here, he gives you the recipe for what he would do. If I'm just painting an entire army, I'm going to use Thunderhawk Blue, Rust Gray, and Blue Horror, and this is the result I'm going to get. So he really kind of helps you break into both ends of that. Like, hey, I'm going to paint all my HQ choices this really nice polished black, but I'm going to paint the rest of my black army, Raven Guard, Black Templars, Iron Hands, which he exemplifies right here, in this way, shape, or form. So if you're trying to sharpen your skills at painting miniatures, I think Darren does this with an incredible job of really showing you how painting works on that studio level. I mean, you see these minis throughout the mini codexes, White Dwarfs, and publications of Games Workshop and sort of think to yourself, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to paint exactly that. And the reality is often much times harsher, but that's okay. I mean, my first minis had walleyes, and Darren helps you peer into that arena and how to tackle it. I think that's such an important perspective to glean when you're jumping into the hobby for the first time. You get that advanced level that you might not be able to touch just yet, but it will help you out so much in understanding how to push yourself to that next level. There's two videos I want to bring up. First is Latham's guide on how to paint heads for Sisters of Battle. It's an amazing tutorial, but I swear to God, I've never felt more suspense watching a painting tutorial video than when Darren paints one of the eyeballs on camera. I sat up and held my breath. It was too intense. I was freaking out the whole time. Now the second video, and one I think absolutely everyone should watch, that's what I'm going to be linking here, is this video for reaching 20,000 subscribers. He goes through 20 top tips for setting yourself up for success in painting minis. It's 20 minutes long, and he hits on so many awesome things that I never even considered, or things that are just really solid takeaways. Like, for instance, finding a mentor. Darren talks about that mentor being someone that either will be a literal mentor or just another painter that you look up to and you want to learn more about their styles, their techniques. He has this almost philosophical way that he talks about painting and approaching the hobby, and it's such a rich viewpoint that I believe all hobbyists should hear. So our last little bit here, and this is an honorable mention more than anything, because this is not a YouTube channel. Unfortunately, it is an amazing channel though, and I think that everyone jumping into the game, or even if you're currently in the game, you want to get better at playing certain portions of your army, so on and so forth, Goonhammer.com is the place to go to, in my opinion. You have a lot of different games that it covers, Kill Team, Horus Heresy, everything like that. But they do reviews of a lot of the new supplements that come out, a lot of the new books that come out. They talk about, you know, hey, how to break into ITC, stuff like that. It is definitely more of a competitive edge on the tabletop gaming portion of Warhammer, obviously. But I think that their really fun narrative way to kind of break down certain things is it's really approachable. They kind of tell you, hey, these are the things that work for me, and this is why. And then other writers of the website, I kept wanting to say the YouTube channel, of the website, jump in and kind of give you their viewpoint. Like, yeah, you know, this didn't really work for this guy, but this worked for me, and this is how I made it work. So they have a lot of really amazing things going on this website. I go here every day. Like their review of the Sisters of Battle Codex was amazing. was amazing. And especially with all the new Psychic Awakening stuff coming out, like here, Blood of Ball, the Goonhammer review part 2, Tyranids, and one for Blood Angels, they tell you exactly what's really coming out of that supplement and what's really working. They do an amazing job for covering everything. Like Turin and I talk about this place all the time. I believe that Turin actually plays, if you guys don't know that, Turin is another YouTuber that covers Total War Warhammer alongside me. Turin actually plays with a lot of these guys in his local game store. So Goonhammer is an amazing channel if you want to get more into like the nitty gritty, actual competitive portion of Warhammer tabletop. All right, guys, that brings our video here to a close. Hopefully you enjoyed this little quick top 5 video. I really wanted to do this video for a long time, and I feel like there are so many people that play Warhammer or Total War Warhammer or Vermintide or Chaos Bane or Dawn of War 1 and 2, not 3 anymore, and they play the hobby as a result of that. Or they play the hobby and they play the games now because they can play the hobby at home, whatever it is. I know so many of you guys comment on my videos and say, hey, I watch this while I'm painting and so on and so forth. So I really wanted to share with you guys some videos, or at least some channels, that really inspire me or that really get me up and going. I mean, all these guys are really amazing. Like Emil and Scott, they've got full-on families. They're just really good dudes. And I don't know what the requirement is for being like a Games Workshop, or I guess a miniature hobby YouTube channel, that you all have to be disgustingly good looking. It's atrocious. I'm over here without any fucking hair going like, oh yeah, it must be great. It must be great to be so goddamn hot. But it's just really cool to get like this really awesome, varied opinion from a lot of different channels. And it gives you a really awesome different way to approach a lot of different techniques or different ways to approach the hobby as a whole. I think it's very important to get such a variety of perspectives because it helps you become a better hobbyist. It helps you get better at Warhammer. It helps you just learn how to do things outside of the box that you would never ever have considered. Even if there's something that I know, like a tried and true method, like for instance, painting Blood Angels armor. I know exactly my formula, right? Like I'm going to do Mephiston red, then I'm going to do Agrax Earthshade, then I'm going to do Evil Sun Scarlet. I'm going to build it up from there. But I'll watch the other channels because it'll give me a different way to approach it that I never even considered. And that I think is important. As like Emil was saying in his video is, you know, you always want to be challenging yourself with every single project that you do. And this is the best way to get better at becoming a hobbyist, is challenging yourself in ways that you haven't before. And I think that that's the big thing about these channels, is that it does challenge you. So hopefully you guys, you enjoyed this video here today and you got a lot of awesome takeaways, or at least some channels you can dive into. As always, have a good one though. Thank you. And please go check out all their channels. You can find them in the links below. Subscribe, check them out. They're all amazing dudes. But again, please go check out their channels. They're great guys. But as always, guys, have a good one and take care.